Welcome to the second mini episode for the No Fear podcast. This is a exclusive for our Patreon supporters. So first of all, if you're listening to this, thank you so much for donating and keeping this podcast going. So what we've got planned for today is something that fits in with our general theme of the main podcast, which right now is haunted houses. And we've kind of touched on it off and on in what we've recorded so far about The Shining. And so here we're going to have just a brief debate about The Shining, whether the book or the movie is better.
The Shining is first of all, it's one of my favorite stories, just period. I saw the film version first, and I loved it. And I still have a fond spot for the film version. What Kubrick does with some of the imagery is about the most haunting that I've seen in anything. Definitely the most iconic. You see that pattern of the carpet anywhere out of context, and people know exactly what you're talking about. However, recently I read the book, and I have to say it's changed how I watch the movie now, and I will forever love the book better.
You know, I mean, we started off by saying that this was a debate, but I guess it can't really be a debate if we completely agree.
Tell me why. Yeah,
but to be honest, I know Stephen King very famously despises, detests the Kubrick version of The Shining. He has been on record many times saying how much he hates that version. So much so that, I mean, he gave his seal of approval to the miniseries that they aired on TV in the 90s, which I actually haven't seen, surprisingly. But, I mean, I have the same story. I remember watching The Shining movie first, and I watched it with my mom because she has a story from when the book first came out. She was living by herself in a little one-bedroom garage apartment kind of thing, and there was just, creaky stairs and everything, and the book just, scared the daylights out of her. And I started getting into horror movies, and she's like, oh, well, you have to watch The Shining. So we watched it together, and it freaked me out to no end. And same thing with the carpet. I've been in many hotels and had that realization of, oh my God, this hotel carpet looks like The Shining. Is there going to be blood coming out of the elevator? Nope, no, there's not. Okay, that's good. Okay. But
right.
I mean, I read The Shining, the book, a few years later. I think I was probably 16 or 17 when I read the book, and that's the last time I've read it. But I'll be honest, I actually just recently rewatched the movie just about a month or two ago with my daughter because she's getting into horror movies. And I mean, the same thing. I mean, Kubrick just as a director is so good that even as bad of an adaptation as the movie is at times, what he's doing is so interesting with the imagery and the sound. And I mean, I forgot how discordant the music is throughout that movie. I mean, it almost gives you a headache, and that's how he's building up that tension. It's very masterfully done, even if it's not really that great as an adaptation.
Well, I think that's an important thing to point out, is that it's a great movie. It is a bad adaptation. And I think there are several things that really annoy me now when I go back and watch it. One of the things is the way that he portrays Wendy in the film version. And not to say anything with the way that she is acted, which is well done, I think, but just the characterization of Wendy to me, it's just horrible because she feels so weak for most of the movie. She feels so mousy. She feels so kind of beaten down. And I remember even when I watched it before I had read the book, wanting her to get some fight in her before she finally does. And in the book, she's a much stronger character, and you don't feel like she's as much of a pushover, which I appreciated because she was a much more well-rounded character in the book. And that was one of the reasons that I really fell in love with the book, is because it fixed that problem that I always had watching the movie, was the character of Wendy, but then also the characterization of Jack throughout the whole thing. I feel like in the Kubrick version, he really doesn't have a chance to redeem himself at all.
It's just a slow, steady descent with no possible...
Yeah, he's mean on the car ride up to the Overlook.
I can't tell how much of that is Jack the character and how much of that is Jack Nicholson.
Nicholson, that's true.
I mean,
No, but I mean, he just seems like he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want his family along. He's annoyed with his son. He's annoyed with his wife, which I would be annoyed with his wife too if I had that version of Wendy. But, you know, he goes from bad to worse, and it is just this slow descent. And in the book, you have this, again, this really nice, well-rounded character of somebody who has done some questionable things in the past and who has some regrets, but is working to get past them and to get over them. And he's trying very hard to rebuild relationships, and he loves his wife and he loves his son. And they're the center of his world, and that's what he's focused on. And he would do anything. In fact, he does do anything in the book version to keep his family safe, even as he's losing his grip on reality and even as he's kind of succumbing to the effects of the hotel on him. There's that great moment, which I guess, I don't know if we should put something out there. This book was written in the 70s, so I don't think I feel like I should have to say spoilers, but
no, you're good.
I'm going to spoil the ending of this. You know, even in the ending, though, he's almost sacrificial in making sure that he's the one. What is it? Who amps up the boiler? Right?
I think so. Again,
is that what it is? It's been a couple of years since I've read it. He's ignoring it because I don't think the hotel wants to blow up. Right? The hotel kind of tries to stop it, but he refuses to go to the boiler and stop it. And he also refuses to kill the child. Remember, he stops himself and tells him to run, and the hotel makes him disfigure himself. Yes, right. Because, I mean, I can't speak to the movie, but I have read the book, and I was thinking, I wonder if that feeling you have, Lisa, about the book versus a movie is because the book just does, in the book, King does such a great job of putting us in all the characters' heads. Like, we get to see every single person and how they feel and what their past is and why. We get a lot of great motivation that I don't even know if you could get in a movie.
That's what I was going to say, that's the biggest problem of a movie sometimes, is to have that kind of internal dialogue without having some sort of cheesy voiceover, which I don't think Kubrick would have ever done with that kind of a movie. So you lose that internal dialogue, which would make Jack a little more sympathetic.
Yeah, I mean, but see, this is where we are going to get into a debate here, because I don't think you can just blame it on the medium and say that, you know, you have close to 700 pages of a novel to really get into a character's head. Yeah, sure, that's true. However, the ending of that book, there is a very specific choice that is made, that King made, and then that Kubrick made. And in one, you have a father who is fighting with every bit of his body and soul to save his children, or his child and his wife, specifically his child, even as he has these forces that are, as you said, Mel, forcing him to disfigure himself. That, to me, is such a stronger ending. In Kubrick's version, he doesn't have any of those redeeming qualities in the end. He has gone mad. He is going after his kid, and they happen to get away. That's it. And to me, it is so much more interesting that you have that humanity that he has held on to, and that's what he's going to fight for in the end. That has nothing to do with whether or not it's in the character's head. That is a deliberate choice by Kubrick, and that is so, in my mind, the ending. I have such problems watching the ending of the movie now, especially even when he sits there frozen in the snow. Isn't that's one of the images you have of Jack Nicholson's face, right? Is frozen in the snow, and in the end of the King version, everything has blown up, and it's this literal inferno. And so you kind of have this literalization of the hell that they've been through in the midst of this icy wilderness, which to me is, what would that have looked like on film? I think that's just really what bothers me.
Well, no, I agree with you there. I mean, it really is. There is so much that I like about the Kubrick movie that I almost want to make excuses for it at times. But like it really is just a very poor adaptation, and it shows just almost a fundamental misunderstanding of what the story is about. It's not about a dad going crazy and trying to kill his family. It's about, like you said, fighting against these forces for that almost moment of redemption that is there. And that's what Stephen King does so well, is having these conflicted characters that even while they're in the depths of these horrible things, that you can almost find something sympathetic with them. I mean, there are pure evil characters in his stories, but then most of the time there's something redeeming, so that it gives you pause to go, oh God, I actually feel sorry for this monster.
Well, and I'll even step out and say that The Shining, both versions of it, and getting to know the story through both versions has changed the way I look at just horror as a genre as well, because King does do that. He is so good at giving them a little bit of a redeeming, or even if you want to say a humanizing quality to the monsters. But he also is really good at leaving just a little bit of hope, even in the most desolate of moments. And maybe that's the difference between the burning ending of the book version of The Shining and then the frozen ending of Kubrick's version, because you really are looking at something really cold and devoid of emotion by the time you get to the end of the Kubrick version, the film version. There's not much hope there. You don't feel hope for anybody. I didn't. It's just, you feel beaten up by the end of that movie. And when you come to the end of what King originally wrote, there is so much hope, both for Wendy and for little Danny. I guess he continued the story of Danny later, many years later, but you do have that bit of hope as they're leaving, which that tends to be now the way I like my horror. I like it to beat me up and take me through to the really lowest point, but don't leave me there. Give me some humanity, give me some hope. That's what I need.
Well, and I think, too, the other thing about the ending of the Kubrick version, and it may be that I just rewatched it, so it's a little fresher on my mind, but it doesn't end in the snow. It ends with that panning through the building of the Overlook, and then zooming in on the picture from the 30s, and you see that Jack's character was there in the 30s. So it almost gives this sense of like inevitability, that this was always going to happen no matter what. So there really was no hope whatsoever that Jack Jack was caught in this. My point. Yeah, he was caught in this web. And so I mean, I guess it does come down to, how do you like your horror served? Do you want a little bit of hope at the end, or do you just want pure bleak darkness? And I tend to side with you there. I do like to have a little bit of hope, because I'm already enough of a pessimist, but there are those moments where sometimes that bleak ending is well earned, but I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it really just comes, and like I said, I don't want to act like I don't like Kubrick's version, because it is so iconic, and it has got some genuine, I mean, from, the creepy twin girls to the, you mentioned the flood of blood coming from the elevators to that, oh gosh, that woman in the bathtub. There's such good moments of just pure visual horror in that movie, and I will always love it for that. But I can't compare it to the book version, because I will forever and always love it.
Right. No, I absolutely think that the book is better, but again, having recently rewatched it, the way that he multiple times throughout the movie will show the kid riding through the hotel on his little tricycle thing, that like it's these long continuous shots where the camera lags just long enough behind him where he turns a corner and you don't know what is going to happen when you turn the corner. Oh my God, the tension is so amped up. And I've seen the movie. I know what's going to happen. And even still knowing what's going to happen, that you feel that tension coming at you, that like,
oh yeah, the way they tease that one room that the old woman is in. Oh. They mention it, they kind of ride by it. It builds up tension for sure.
So there we have it, The Shining, book or movie. I think the two of us seem to prefer the book, but man, if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it. It's good stuff.
And I will go ahead and say, I think if you're not familiar with either one, I would go ahead and say start with the film.
It's definitely a very good primer on
Yeah.
Just the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Start with the film and just know that the book is much better.
This is the No Fear Podcast. You can find us online at Twitter and Instagram at No Fear Cast. That's KNOW Fearcast. Or our website, nofearcast.com. If you want to contact us, send us an email to nofearcast@gmail.com. Download us through iTunes, Stitcher, or anywhere else podcasts are found. If you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, or you can support us on Patreon. Even a little bit makes a big difference. The No Fear Cast. We know what scares you. This is a personal project and not related to any academic institution.